if necessary. Okay, let's begin. Okay, here we go. I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st.
Oh,
Did I arrive in Guatemala?
yes, I arrived
Yes,
in
I
Guatemala
arrived in
November
Guatemala.
1st.
Where did I arrive?
Guatemala.
Guatemala, right? I arrived in Guatemala. I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st. Who arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead?
Me, Jihao.
Well, me, AJ. Right? I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st. Did I arrive in Guatemala on November 3rd?
No, I didn't.
No, I didn't arrive in Guatemala on November 3rd. I arrived in Guatemala on November 1st. What day did I arrive in Guatemala?
A day of
November
the day.
1st. I arrived in Guatemala
November 1st.
on November 1st. Where did I arrive on November 1st?
Guatemala. I arrived
Guatemala.
in Guatemala.
I arrived in
November
Guatemala
1st.
on November 1st. I arrived in Guatemala on the Day of the Dead, November 1st. I was curious about this holiday, so I went to the cemetery to see what was happening.
Oh,
Was I angry about this holiday?
no, I was
No, I wasn't angry
angry
about this holiday.
this holiday.
Was I sad about this holiday?
No, I was sad
No,
this
I wasn't
holiday.
sad about this holiday. I was curious about this holiday. Who was curious about this holiday?
Me, Jihao.
I was, AJ. I was curious about this holiday. What was I curious about?
A holiday.
The holiday, right? I was curious about the holiday. Which holiday was I curious about? Which holiday was I curious about? The Day of the Dead.
Day of the Dead.
I was curious about the Day
this
of the Dead.
holiday.
Was I curious about the Day of the Dead? Or was I curious about Christmas?
I
was curious
this
about
holiday,
the Day of the Dead, of course.
a Day of the Dead.
I was curious about the Day of the Dead. So I went to the cemetery to see what was happening. Where did I go?
The cemetery.
To the cemetery. I went to the cemetery. Did I go to the cemetery or did I go to the airport?
I went to cemetery.
Yeah, I went to the cemetery. Who went to the cemetery?
Me, Jihao.
Well, me, right, AJ. I went to the cemetery. Where did I go?
The
To
cemetery.
the cemetery, right. I went to
the
the
cemetery.
cemetery. When did I go to the cemetery?
Guatemala.
November 1st,
November
the Day
1st.
of the Dead.
The
right?
Day
I
of the
went
Dead.
to the
I
cemetery
went to the cemetery
on the Day of the
on
Dead,
November 1st.
November 1st. Why did I go to the cemetery?
to see.
Well,
I
to
went
see
to see
what
what's
was
happening.
I went to the cemetery to see what was happening. Who went to the cemetery to see what was happening?
Me.
Me, AJ, went to the cemetery
I
to
went
see
to see.
what was happening.
I went to the cemetery
Where
to see what happening.
Was the cemetery?
Guatemala. I
In
went
Guatemala. The
Guatemala.
cemetery was in Guatemala. What is the Day of the Dead? A holiday. The Day of the Dead
Holiday.
is a holiday. When is the Day of the Dead?
November 1st.
November 1st. The Day of the Dead was and is November 1st. So I went to the cemetery on the Day of the Dead to see what was happening. What I found was quite interesting. Was it boring?
No.
No, it wasn't boring.
It's more interesting.
Was it interesting?
Yes.
Yes. It was interesting.
Interesting.
The cemetery was interesting. How did I feel about the cemetery?
The cemetery was interesting.
I
Interesting.
felt it was interesting. Or I thought it was interesting. Was it boring or was it interesting?
It's more interesting.
It was interesting. Of course, it was interesting. What was interesting?
The cemetery.
The cemetery.
Was
The
interesting.
cemetery was interesting. When was the cemetery interesting?
November 1st, a day
It was
of the
interesting
dead.
on the Day of the Dead, November 1st. Okay, the atmosphere in the cemetery was like a party.